Ready to go.
Okay, good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, May 21st. Welcome to the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee. I'm Chairman Buscayuno. I'm joined by Mr. Bonin. We may have Mr. Krikorian hop on over from E&E here shortly. This time I'd like to turn to multiple comments, assuming... Okay, Herman, please come forward. 2 minutes on multiple comments and then 1 minute general public.
Yeah, everybody. It's a summertime cop on item number 3. Harbor Commission City Administrative Officer, Marine Fuel Station at Berth NOS 73A. Fuck you! And then I went into the next item, number 5, CD50, the Summertime Cop Energy Western Energy Region LLC. 40.04 acres of fucking land for storage tanks. No, we need housing. Just like we did 30 years for an annual rent. $6,236 for 794 for land. Fuck you too, Summertime Cop. Yeah, this is what happens when you treat the people with disabilities now come into play.
Stick to the item.
Okay, so the Third Amendment. See, I'm used to the First Amendment. This is second, but the Third Amendment. Gender Rights Purpose Operating Agreement number 19-2340C, C for Cunt, with Custom Air Warehouse Incorporation. They're going to expand a continued use of 37,000 square feet to the office warehouse space. This is located at 5540 West 104th. I know where that's at, 104th. I used to go to Watts off 104th, but that's not on the subject of exemption. This is requirements as provided to Article Section 2.F for fuck you Los Angeles City sequel guidelines. Because niggas don't know what they're doing with these guidelines when there's nothing submitted for community impact statement report. That's why people with disabled come here and they fight for the physical impact statement submitted. Yes, Joe, stick to the topic, you fucking stupid Italian. Now my general public comment.
General public comment.
So you see, folks, the Silvertongue Cop, he's running the port like he ran Seabreeze with Ottoman off of the so-called Crenshaw and Obama Boulevard. And I told the world that Pasadena, Crenshaw and Ottoman stole loans and took all these grants and asked Herman Jason Wesson to lie before the Obama Commission to ask for more money. This is the reason why they're gutting the government. They're stealing. We know they're stealing. Look at the Silvertongue Cop. His hair has more white and gray than mine. And I keep wondering why the fuck he's taking a picture of that so-called article there. He doesn't know shit about ports. All he knows how to steal. The same way you steal from Seabreeze. And that's where the DOJ and the FBI are going to stick their foot up your ass, Joe. It's a matter of time, rookie.
Okay, same thing with Wayne. Come on up. 2 minutes general public, multiple cards, and then also 1 minute general public. Be sure to stick to the items, Wayne.
Yes. Welcome to everybody's favorite meeting. Shut that fucking thing off. Okay, now, number 1 Chief Financial Officer, fuck you and your report. No, not fuck the police. Fuck the port report. Hey, that rhymes.
Very good.
Yes. Now, number 2, the delegation to foreign trade terrorism on number 2. Yes, let's go send your fat fucking pigs over to China, pronounced China, to go over and negotiate for Donald Trump, you stupid fucking cop. You know you can't do that. It is just a junket for city employees to go over and rent the services of young little Thailand girls in closets to be hung and fucked with, yes. So I say no. Number 3, the Silvertongue goddamn Italian Boscaino on Sequa
Last
does
warning,
not
stick to the
under
items,
no.
okay?
I said Sequa, you shit. Yes. Now we get to number 4, the foreign trade zone. What is this? The foreign trade zone in South Banning Boulevard. Actually, I support it.
You do?
Yes, I do. 'Cause not even a nigger would live in that fucking area, yes. The only thing they can do down there is take a piss on shipping containers. We could hold housing there, but let's go ahead and let the Chinese use it to ship more of their garbage into the fucking port. And then number 5, berth number 238, 239. Yes, what type of berth are we talking about? Are we talking about a baby? No, a rent of $1,700,000 for the use of site tags. Cheap rent for a cheap,
Okay, 1
stupid
minute.
fucking
General
city.
public comment.
Yes, look at the money you waste. Look at the terrible management practices that you have. Dumping. And now the military is going to open up that new fucking tanker facility next to you, Joe. And I heard you whining. My name is Joe Buscaino. I'm an Italian-American. I'm a silver-tongued cop, and I can't stand up to the United States military, and they're going to poison everybody down in San Pedro. I have no political power to stop, and I can't stop Donald Trump. Donald Trump is my God. I can't stop Donald Trump. That's right. You will never stop the great Donald. Donald Trump will take his giant boot and stick it up your fucking ass. He's already done it to Joe Blow, and he's already done it to Mike Bonin. He can't get anything up his ass. Thank you, Donald Trump. Make America great again.
Okay, Chief.
Fuck you.
Okay, same thing. You pulled them cards. Why don't you first speak on the multiple cards,
Multiple cards in.
and then you'll be given 1 minute general public comment.
Okay, this is about the port. Hey, I got a couple questions for you. You took Janice Hahn's seat, right? Joe?
Yes.
Did she endorse you?
Okay, so speak on the items, please.
I'm just
Thank
asking you
you.
a question. Did she endorse you?
Speak on the items. Last warning.
You want to fuck with me? You don't want to fuck with me. I'm the king of the First Amendment. Now you don't want. I'm just asking you a
Speak to the
simple
items.
question.
Speak to the items.
No, I'm asking you a simple
Okay.
question. Did she
You just
endorse
forfeited
you?
your time. So give them this 1 minute of public comment, please. General public comment. Thank you.
You really want to fuck with me, Joe?
Thank you.
You know, see, I'm trying to be your friend and help you out, and you trying to fuck with me. And I don't appreciate that because I'm asking you some viable questions. If Janice Hahn
Speaker should
supported you,
be speaking on the general matters.
Thank you.
general matters, well, she took my best friend's seat. Is that general enough? All right, Joe. I'll fix that.
Okay.
You got to walk out that door.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that concludes multiple speakers and general public comment. Mr. Bond, if I can direct your attention to today's agenda, let us take on consent items, unless you want to hold any of these, let me know. Items 2 through 10. Would you like to hold any of those on the desk? No, I'm good. Very good. We'll approve items 2 through 10 on consent, which leaves us to the annual Harbor Department proposed budget from the Chief Financial Officer's verbal report. Item number 1, if you can read that into the record, and bring up Ms. Blevins.
Good afternoon, John White, City Clerk. Item 1 is a report from the Chief Financial Officer, Port of Los Angeles, relative to the department's proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget.
Thank you. Before Ms. Blevins, you begin, just for the members of the audience, please act in your best behavior. Otherwise, you will be asked to leave. Thank you very much. So, Ms. Blevins, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Marla Blevins, Deputy Executive Director and Chief Financial Officer for the Port of Los Angeles. We're here today to present the Harbor Department's budget for fiscal year 2020. This budget was initially presented to our board at its April 4th meeting, and we plan on going back to our board on June 6th for final consideration and adoption of the budget. So for today's presentation, we'd like to present a high-level overview of our budget, a sense of where we think our operating revenues are going to be for the next year, our operating expenses, and then our capital improvement program, where we'll highlight several of the key CIP projects that we plan on building for next year. So on the next slide, this shows the key drivers and components of our budget for next year. The yellow column represents where we think we're going to land for fiscal year 2020. While I'd like to focus here just to explain, it compares the proposed budget for next year to the current year's adopted budget and the forecast for the current year's budget. So starting at the top, we're projecting 9.2 million 20-foot equivalent units, or TEUs, and the reason why we highlight that is because it's a huge driver in terms of the top-line revenue for the organization. Operating revenues are projected at $497.8 million. There's a bit of uncertainty as to where TEUs and volumes are going to be in light of the tariffs that have been announced in Washington. It makes it hard to predict, but this is where we think we are for right now. Operating expenses of $277.9 million. The increase is due in large part to salaries increases as mandated by the MOUs. So once taking into account operating revenues and expenses, we're projecting operating income of $219.9 million. Our capital improvement program for next year is projected to be $144.4 million. We're essentially doubling what we spent this year, and that's due to where we are with certain projects, and we'll talk more about that later. And then lastly, debt service, that's principal and interest payments on money that we've borrowed to pay for previous capital projects, is $85.4 million. And the port currently has $810 million in debt outstanding, and we have a AA credit rating, which is the highest rating given to any port in the country without tax support.
Nice.
So in this slide, our revenues, as mentioned before, $497.8 million. We're still refining the numbers. It might change a little bit, but probably no more than a 1 to 2% difference from what you see right here. So this just really shows where our money is coming from. Over 80% of our revenue comes from shipping services, and this includes wharfage, dockage, pilotage fees, and demurrage fees. And just to explain a little bit about what all that is. Wharfage consists of the charges for cargo and merchandise that come over the wharves at the port. Dockage is the fees that the ships pay to dock at the port. The pilot fees are the fees that we charge for the port pilot services for guiding the ships into the harbor. And demurrage fees are late fees. So as you can see, the big driver of our revenues are the cargo business. 13% of our revenue comes from rentals of land. This includes a rail yard that we lease to the Union Pacific, as well as our marinas and rentals for industrial purposes. The remaining 6% of our revenues come from a variety of sources, including clean truck program fees, utility reimbursements for our alternative maritime power program, parking, and film permits. These proportions are very similar to the prior year. And on the expense side, 85% of our budget is comprised of 3 line items: salaries and benefits for Harbor Department employees, city services, and outside services. So salaries and benefits is a little over half of our budget, coming in at $146 million. The department has about 1,000 authorized full-time positions. The budget assumes a vacancy rate of about 6%, and it's funded accordingly. So for the past few years, we've averaged a vacancy rate between 6 and 8%. City services is the second largest line item at 20% of the budget, or $55 million. This is money that the Harbor Department pays to other city departments for services rendered to the department. Roughly 90% of that $55 million goes to the fire department, rec and parks, and city attorney for services that they provide to the Harbor Department. Outside services, Basically, contractual services is the third largest line item at $39.6 million, or 14% of our budget. And this is largely spent on IT-related services, environmental, CEQA reviews, and other professional services that aren't performed by Harbor Department employees. So the rest of the 15% of the budget is rounded out by travel for business meetings, trainings and trade missions, public relations, the community grant programs, materials and supplies, and utilities, and our environmental incentive program. And on the next slide, it just shows some historical trends for the three major line items. So our salaries and benefits have been growing at a rate of about 4.2%. For the period between fiscal year 2013 and 2020, city services has been growing at the highest rate of 7.5%, and outside services has been growing at about 3.1%. And all the while, revenues have grown at a rate of 3.3% during the same time period. Okay. Now turning to our capital budget. For next year, we are projecting $144.4 million. This pie chart shows the broad categories of expenditures for the CIP. This amount is roughly twice as much as what we expect to spend in the current year. The largest category is for terminals, so that's about 45% of the CIP, $64.7 million, and we'll highlight a couple of those projects on the upcoming slides. Transportation transportation-related projects is about 8% of our budget at $11.7 million, and this includes rail projects as well as roadway improvements, the Harbor Boulevard, Vincent Thomas Bridge area. We're doing some major work there. Security-related projects, 6% of the budget, or $8.5 million. This includes a new radio system for the Port Police, as well as a new computer-aided dispatch system, a new records management system, and a license plate reader program, or system rather.
Nice.
Also, public access. We'll highlight a couple of those projects as well. 15% of the budget at $21.5 million. And lastly, maritime services, which includes non-tenant related facilities. So that would be, for example, the Harbor Administration Building, which is undergoing some renovations. And that's going to be roughly 26% of our budget at $38 million. The next slide just kind of shows a historical perspective on our CIP spending going back to roughly 1998. As you can see, there are kind of peaks and valleys driven by particular projects. In the early 2000s, expenditures on the Pier 400 and China shipping really caused a spike in the CIP spending. And then in around fiscal year 2010, the spending on the Tray Pack Terminal was a big driver. The current year and last year were kind of low expenditure years for us, but we do expect an increase going forward, particularly within the next 2 years, as our spending on waterfront projects and modems ramp up. So that's just a little bit of a historical perspective and a look forward, going forward.
Thanks, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So getting into specific projects, we have a major project at Berth's in the 200 area for the Everport redevelopment. Overall, the goal of the project is to make the terminal able to accommodate the larger ships that are coming into the port. This is a $69.4 million project, and we expect to spend about $29.5 million next year. The upgrades include dredging, the construction of infrastructure to support 3 additional cranes, expansion of backlands, and enhancements to the alternative maritime power capabilities of the terminal. The next project is an enhancement to our marine oil terminals, such as Shell, Valero, Vopak, Phillips 66, New Star, and PBF. MOTEM stands for Marine Oil Terminal Engineering and Maintenance Standards. This is a requirement from the California State Lands Commission to bring up our liquid bulk terminals up to code and to seismically retrofit them. All in, it's a $204 million project, and we expect to spend $14.7 million next year. Each one of the 6 terminals is in a different phase of development, whether it's design, pre-construction environmental work, that sort of thing. Okay. And switching gears, this chart shows our planned expenditures for the Public Access Investment Plan. As I'm sure you're aware, in 2015, our board adopted the Public Access Investment Plan, which commits 10% of our operating income to public access projects. These are largely our waterfront projects and facilities that provide access
Can you
to the
explain,
waterfront.
can you walk me through, Marla,
Sure.
the percentage? Remind me, how do they come to that number, that figure, 10%? Why not 15 or 20 or?
Okay. So the,
How do you say that again? Remind me.
sure, so I'm actually going to go back to the first slide here. So the operating income number is the revenues minus expenses. So that's the four, and looking at the yellow column on slide 3.
I see it.
So that's the 497 minus the 277, which gets us to the 219. And so we have committed to spending 10% of the 219 number over the course of a 10-year period. If we don't have expenditures in that period of time, it will roll over to the following year or the next year, and so it builds up a bank, if you will.
And why 10%?
You know, that was just the number. This was kind of developed a little before I got here. I think the executive director wanted to come up with an amount that was sustainable. And it really just depends on that's the number that we've come up with. It's a minimum. If there are projects that come in over that, then it's possible that it might be more. But I wanted to tie the success of the port to the success of the waterfront.
And who gives that discretion? The port director or the commission can change that number?
But ultimately, the commission votes approves the budget. We are in the process, actually, of meeting with members of the community, neighborhood councils, stakeholders.
Office as well, appreciate that.
Yes.
Outreach.
Outreach to figure out what the next round of projects are to kind of round that out. So,
Yeah, obviously, we see some significant investments on the waterfront projects in Wilmington and San Pedro. We're seeing it, so really appreciate that commitment.
so any feedback that you have to offer or is definitely welcomed in terms of kind of filling out these projects, particularly on the back end. You can see, like in the ending years of 2024 and 25, there's not a lot there. So we're looking for projects in those outerlying years of the plan. So, and just to highlight a couple of the waterfront projects. Let's see, going to slide 12. We've got the Wilmington Waterfront Promenade, which consists of design and construction plan for later in the year. It's a 1,200-foot promenade and a public plaza and parking. And, this project was stalled for a little bit due to some negotiations with sister agency, but thanks to guidance and leadership from your office, we were able to clear through a critical path item, so we thank you for that. So this project is a $52.7 million project, and we anticipate spending roughly $5.5 million next year. Okay. See the next project, the Avalon Gateway and Promenade. This is a 13-foot pedestrian bridge along Avalon Boulevard from the Triangle to the Promenade. The entry plaza, we're in the process of designing it. We are receiving some additional input from the community on making some slight revisions to the design of the project. This is a $23.8 million project, and there's a fairly modest amount expected to be spent next year of $350,000, but that will ramp up as we move into construction for the project. And then lastly, the San Pedro Public Market, Town Square and Promenade. As you're aware, this is a $150 million project, and the port's share of that is about $59.2 million. We expect to spend $11.5 million on it next year, and the port's portion will go to support infrastructure to complement, support, and enable the development of the San Pedro Public Market. And so we expect design is going on right now, and construction was planned to start later on this year. Okay. And then on our last slide, it just shows the range of projects throughout the port. I've talked about most of these, and this is just really intended to show the depth and breadth of the projects that are planned at the port. So with that,
Thank you. Clearly, today, obviously, clearly the port is improving on the infrastructure and the capital improvements. Today we honored Public Works Week in the city of Los Angeles, and I indicated the partnership between our Public Works family and the Port of Los Angeles as we're advancing these efforts. And as Infrastructure Week concludes, we remind ourselves that, you know, America's port is moving forward. And clearly on these types of investments. Any concerns you have, any types of maybe potential risks moving forward financially in the coming years that we should be concerned of? There's trade war talks, and every time there's a threat to with our trading partners, obviously it's going to take a hit to our local workforce, the entire region, and the country as well, since we are the main gateway of goods movement. So
the tariffs, the trade war with China is a huge concern. There's actually been an interesting effect on the port's cargo volumes. They've actually increased. We're probably looking at having a record year this year because shippers are front-loading cargo, or have been, in order to get ahead of the tariffs. But we don't know how long that phenomenon is going to last, and so it makes it very difficult to predict you know, what revenues and cargoes are going to be like going forward. Although we do have certain things in place, like our 7 container terminals have minimum annual amounts of money that they have to pay us each year that cover a huge portion of our expenses and our debt obligations.
Right.
So.
And on the commercial side of things, of the retail, dining, entertainment portions, the investments that were made on the Cabrillo Marina on the outer harbor has help lead or create the pathway towards moving forward on having these types of projects come to fruition. I know the RFP is already out on the Cabrillo Way Marina.
Yes.
And you've got a few responses already.
We have. So we did, it's a 2-stage process. So we released an RFQ to get a list of qualified developers. And so then there's an RFP that's out to them right now, and then we'll decide amongst the handful of. We're getting restless because again, the improvements, the infrastructure, it's a beautiful marina. It's just we just need to populate it and maximize the space. Yes.
And create some hopeful hospitality jobs and maximize that space for the community and for this entire region. And then the outer harbor, another capital improvement. It was a cruise terminal, right, for overflow?
Yes, when we have 3 and 4 ship days, which are rare, but they do happen, and we the cruise ship docks out there.
And that's going to go out to bid as well to maximize that space?
Yes.
I think it's 13 acres or so.
Yes.
Very good. All right. Mr. Bonner, you good? Thank you, Ms. Blevins. Appreciate the report. So no action here is required. This is an annual presentation per the city charter that we look forward to each and every year. The state of the port is strong, and we appreciate the leadership of Mr. Soroka and his executive team, you, Marla, and the rest of the port family. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that clears the desk. Thank you so much. We're now adjourned. Thank you.